Hello friends, welcome to this online refresher course that is Concerns in Educational Research and Assessment under ARPIT 2019. I'm Dr. Gaurav Rao from Mahatma Jyotiba Phule Ruhelkhand University, Bareilly. I extend my greetings to you all on behalf of National Resource Center for Education, that is NRC, for Education, Central University of South Bihar, Gaya. I'm here to discuss with you the procedures and steps in conducting the interview procedures. The interviews are generally carried out in 3 steps, that is planning, execution and closure. Step 1 is planning and preparation for the interview. For the insightful pre-planning and preparation for smooth conduct of the interview, you may need to take care of the following. First of all, be definite about the objectives of the interview. What is the purpose of conducting the interview? What type of specific information or data is required for discussing the required research problem? On the basis of the objectives, take decision about the type and format of the interview. Whether would you like to have individual or group interview, non-directional, focused or in-depth interview, face-to-face interview, telephonic interview, internet-based interview, structured or unstructured or semi-structured interview. Decide the population or sample of the individual to be interviewed and try to contact them and enlist how to take their cooperation in smooth conduct of the interview. Train yourself with the data collection tool. This also includes skills in developing rapport establishment, interview preparation, and how to proceed for a recording interview to derive the information from that. Ensure for a supportive physical and psychological conditions in which the interview is to be conducted, so that derivations of the information is quick and accurate. Design and decide for the questions of the interview, construct the proper schedule and best sequence of the prepared question. This step of framing questions requires extra effort for success of the interview. That can be like for framing the questions for an example interview schedule, the researcher must keep in mind the basic purposes of using interview, what he is trying to get out of the interview, what type of information or responses he needs from the respondents for addressing the research needs. Next, you should make a choice of the type of questions to be framed for the interview. Ordinarily, 2 kinds of questions, the open-ended or the closed-ended questions, may be in the set of the interview schedule, depending upon the degree of the flexibility allowed to respond in the view of the objective of the interview. Let us understand it with an example. Open-ended question can be like, what kind of in charge would you like for your organization? Closed-ended can be asked in the same way, should there be strict in charge of the institution? The options can be yes, no or undecided. There should be a balanced provision of the open and closed-ended items in the interview schedule. You should take care of the proper phrasing of the questions included in the interview schedule by taking care of the things like use of language, words in the questions for communicating in the ways and the level of graspability of the interviewer. You should avoid biases by asking questions in such a way so that it does not lead to respondents into confirmation of the researcher's view rather than selecting or eliciting their own view. You should avoid leading questions that unconsciously imply a specific answer. You have to have provisions for thought-provoking questions in your interview schedule. You have to also make use of both questioning and statement formats for writing the question. You should take care of the responses mode, that is the way in which the responses are required to be answered in the question. For you all people, I have taken a reference of Tuckman, who has enlisted some modes in using the interview schedule. For example, unstructured responses mode uh, allowing the responses to respond in the way he says, like, describe your feeling as you think about your father. There can be other option like fill in responses mode, requiring the respondents to supply rather than choosing the response. Example, what is your present postal address? The interviewer will write upon the postal address. The next can be the tabular responses requiring for supplying the answer in the tabular format, such as the examinations passed or the university, board, year of passing. Many of you must have had filled that in the form. The next interview schedule type statements can be a scaled response, requiring response by putting tick mark in the scaled position. Example, what are your institution chances of reaching an e-governed institution within the next 5 years? Excellent, good, fair, poor or very poor. You may go into the ranking response example, like rank order the following people in terms of their usefulness as resource of advice and guidance on problems you have encountered in the classroom, like education tutor, subject tutor, class teacher, head teacher, and class fellow. A checklist response can be also there. An example can be, I get more satisfaction in the home from being with the family, reading my favorite book, attending family function, making food in the kitchen, being with my pets. Or there can be another category which are the categorical response mode. An example can be money results in happiness in life for people, true or false. Such examples are very good if you want to exactly find out the findings in true or false form. This was the step 1 that we generally do for pre-planning the interview. The next step is the execution of taking of the interview. Basically, it is the stage of execution of step 1. Firstly, introduce yourself with the important and useful information of yourself to the respondent in an impressive way. Be well dressed according to the cultural settings of the interview. Establish rapport and win the confidence and cooperation of the interviewee by showing warmth and respect towards the interviewee. Assure them up that secrecy of his thoughts and feelings will be kept. You have to explain the purpose of your study to the respondent by being as accurate and brief as possible. Allow for sufficient time to the interviewee respondents for getting ready for the interview. Don't just jump into asking questions. Make them sit, feel them happy, cozy, ask them up, shall I start? Then ask questions. Ask questions very carefully, maintaining the neutrality but in the spontaneous and informal way. Surely in the manner and order as planned as you study. Do not pressurize the interviewee to speak what you want or wanted. Many times it is found that interviewer pressurizes the interviewee to speak something and he records it and say that this was the interviewee thought. Don't do that. Listen patiently with caring, sensitive and appreciative attitude very attentively. Because when you have an unstructured interview or an informal interview, listening and having care and sensitization towards your group of people and hearing them very attentively will help you out to reach to many of the questions which you have not thought of that can be asked. Hence, in an unstructured interview, you can probe into many questions, but you can do that only when you listen them very cautiously. Hear them up what they are saying. Be into that thought which they are having and then take the findings. Motivate and probe your subject to give response, such as ask for further information. Is it so? How about this? Is it also true? You may also ask about explaining some alternatives. Can we also say that? You just said that. Can that be spoken as this? You can also ask about some of the differences, disparity, improbability, inconsistency by saying like, a minute ago you said this, is this necessary? You said a time before that this was this, but now you are saying this. So that way you can also find out the contradictions and compare some of the things that he has not yet spoken. You can get it clarified. You can ask for opinions, clarifications, and comparisons. Like, what do you think of about that? Or, like, do you believe in that? Or, what do you mean by that? You can ask for some elaborations of his ideas, not your ideas, his ideas. Like, have you any other example or incidents? Many times, the interviewee speaks a conclusion on one incident. Ask him to give some more impressions of other incidents and then find it out whether he has a comprehensive understanding of this example or not. Try to read between the lines. Take notes of what ways the interview is saying and what are the manners he is using. Notice the records, the way how one talks and behaves during the interview. Take care of the body language, manner of speaking, emotional tone while responding and reacting to the interview stimulus that you have given. Try to accept the responses and reactions to the interviewee in its original form and record them as adequately as possible. Why I am saying that? Because when you record them up in a whole way, you will be able to filter them out in different ways when you are going to interpret them up. Don't stop them. Express them, ask them to elaborate, do probing questions, and then come out with the conclusions. This will complete your second step of interview, that is the conduction of the interviews. The last step is the closure and the follow-up of the interview. This is the third and the last step of the interview process that comprises of some of the tasks like complete and check the data of information if it is collected completely or not. Many times it is found that in an interview schedule, when you have given the interview schedule to the interviewee, he has very jiffily filled some of the aspects, but some of the places are empty. You can cross check them up. Take care of the interview person, give them some time to ask questions if he wants to. Many times I have seen that when my students go for interview, the moment complete the interview, they run from there. They don't even stop for a while, talk to them and share how did they feel and do they have some queries to ask for or not. This is something that have to be taken into account. After the completion of the interview, wait, ask for some questions if they want to ask as well. Relax the interviewee after the interview is completed by saying thanks to the interviewee for allowing you to ask the questions, and let him know how to contact if he needs you. Many times, many of the students, many of the subject stakeholders do want to contact you after the interview. Give your contacts if they want to. Assure the interviewee about the secrecy of the opinion expressed by him in the course of the interview, and also tell him about sending the reports and results of your research study later if they want to. You have to also see where the recording is done and how it is done. But it is either done through tape or note taking. At the time, if the interview is not, this was not possible, you have to write them up immediately after you have completed the interview. You have to write some of your impressions of the interview as well. These notes will help you to remember and explore the process and products of the interview, because the interview is over. You have not recorded. So you have to write them up immediately, the expressions and impressions you have had. You have to try to analyze and draw the necessary conclusions from the recorded instruments and informations immediately when the interview is done, according to the objectives of the study. This is all about this part. I hope you'll be able to understand the procedures, steps involved, and you'll be able to devise your own interview schedule. Thank you for watching the video. Namaskar.